This is Ancient People, a woodblock print piece made in 1956 by Yoshida Hodaka. The piece consists of two black, abstract objects over an off-white paper background. Each object is comprised of smaller shapes, some of which have white dashes where there is no paint. The abstract nature of the piece is a reflection of Yoshida's artistic style. Yoshida was born into a family with a long lineage of artists. However, his abstractionist art differs from that of his ancestors, who practiced art in a much more traditional Japanese fashion. It should be added that abstract art is not specific to Yoshida. Rather, abstract expressionism was a popular artistic trend throughout the Showa period, which ran from 1926 to 1989. During the Showa period, and especially after World War II, Japan experienced somewhat of a societal transformation, as it shed some of its traditional norms and institutional practices, and went under the control of the Allied powers in 1945. This transformation included the renunciation of the divinity of the emperor, a new constitution, democratization, demilitarization, and a new educational system. 7 years later, in 1952, Japan regained status as an independent nation through the signing of the San Francisco Peace Treaty. Shortly after, in 1955, it signed the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, creating greater involvement in economics and politics, and opening itself up to Western influences. Yoshida himself was particularly influenced by Western cultures. However, these cultures were not 20th century ones, but pre-colonial ones. In his essay, Yoshida Hodaka and Post-World War II, Japanese and American Artistic Exchange, St. Olaf professor Matthew Rohn writes, quote, "For at least half a century leading up to World War II, Western modernists had sought inspiration from primitive cultures. This impulse would intensify during and just after the war when Yoshida Hodaka and other Japanese artists took up the same practice." End quote. Yoshida gathered primitive inspiration on his trip to Mexico in 1955, during which he met with Native American people and viewed pre-Columbian Mayan artifacts and ruins. What Yoshida saw in his travels may be manifested in Ancient People, which resembles pre-Columbian sculptural forms in the way its different pieces are stacked like stone bricks. More generally, the simple but abstract characteristic that Ancient People has symbolizes pre-colonial Western civilizations that lived in a way that people of the modern era are unfamiliar with. The primitivism and abstractionism evoked in Ancient People is expressed in other art of the mid-20th century, both by Yoshida himself as well as other artists. Yoshida's 1956 Stones and Man woodblock print is similar to Ancient People in that it has an unidentifiable object, which appear to symbolize ancient sculptural forms. Meanwhile, Maya's Sacrifice, also a 1956 woodblock print by Yoshida, is different visually from Ancient People, but represents religious traditions of primitive pre-colonial peoples. The picture set called Mexico 1955 by Aaron Siskin offers another representation of pre-colonial cultures, but through a different medium from that of Yoshida. Like Yoshida's art, these pictures are abstract and often unidentifiable upon first glance. Says the University of Arizona webpage, quote, "Siskin has been called an abstract photographer, but his photography is not purely abstract. Rather, Siskin photographed recognizable places and things in ways that created a new means of communicating ideas, feelings, and perspectives on life and history." End quote. By communicating history through art, Siskin, Yoshida, and others emphasize that the traditions and livelihoods from previous societies can remain, in a way, permanent. This notion of permanence provides a strong juxtaposition to the rapid, complex societal changes experienced during the post-World War II era by Japan and the world alike.